Good morning, everyone. We started a discussion with exceptions, right? So I give the summary. So what we covered in the exception handling. In the exception handling, so we discussed the topics. The first one is what is exception, okay, and the second one is uh, types of exceptions, and next one is exception hierarchy, and we done the discussion with checked exception and unchecked exception. Okay, unchecked exception. Okay, and next we're done with exception handling keywords. Except exception handling keywords. Those are like try keyword and catch keyword, and we have the finally keyword and throws keyword and throw keyword. Okay, so generally try keyword which is used to keep the risky code inside the try block. Okay, it is used to keep risky code inside the try block, okay, and next we have catch keyword which is used to catch the exception okay. Next we have the finally keyword. So finally keyword, it is used to execute the statements all the times, okay. Next you have the throws keyword. Okay, throws keyword, it is used to hand over the checked exceptions hand over the checked exceptions to the caller method, or we can say JVM. Okay, next throw keyword, it is used to create the exception programmatically or wantedly. Okay, programmatically or wantedly. So in the previous sessions, we're done with all the areas. Okay, like what is exception, types of exception, exception hierarchy, checked exception, unchecked exception, exception handling keywords, try, catch, finally throws and throws keyword. Now let us go the topic. Today topic we will discuss about custom exception or user defined exception. We can mention custom or user defined exception. User defined exception. So what does it mean by user defined exception? When will you go for the user defined exception? So I will show you programmatically. So I will use the MS Paint, and through that I will try to understand exception. So today the topic name is custom exception or user defined exception. Okay. Okay, fine. I will use MS Paint. So generally, when we will go with a custom exception, so sometimes we will create custom exception based on the sometimes necessary to create the custom exceptions based on the project requirement. Based on the project requirement. Okay, so I will mention here. This is the user, or I can mention the second one is okay, user or custom exception, right? Custom exception. So what is the real time scenario? So when will you go with the user defined or custom exception generally. You guys already Gmail, right? Normally, if you want to log in the Gmail, so you need username and password. Username and password. Okay, username and password. So if the username or password, if you give the correct only, then you can get login successful. Okay, among those, if you give anyone is wrong, then we can mention. So generally we will write the if conditions there, the both conditions is true. So there, that is the one way, and this is also one way to create the custom exceptions. So if you are giving the username and password, then you will get the login successful. You will get the login successful. Okay, if among those anything is wrong, then you need to display invalid credentials. This message, for displaying this message, we will create the user defined exceptions or custom exceptions. Are you guys clear with my point? For displaying this message, we will create the user defined exceptions or custom exceptions. Okay, so one more example also I will tell you. For example, if you go with the ATM, and in your account you have the only amount is 2000 only. In your account you have the amount that is the 2000 only. But if you are trying, what you went to ATM and you are trying to withdraw 5000 rupees, 5000 rupees you are trying to withdraw. So in that case what will happen? Generally in that case ATM will display the message is insufficient balance, right? Insufficient balance. So that kind of message you should display by using the user defined exception. User defined exception or custom exception. Okay, insufficient balance, insufficient funds, insufficient funds. Are you guys clear with my point? So this kind of messages, for example, you have the account only 2000, but you are trying to withdraw 5000, and it will display the message is insufficient funds, insufficient funds. So this message we can, for displaying this message, we will create the custom exception, and through the custom exception, we can create. Right? Are you guys clear with my point? So this is the one example, Gmail and ATM. If you are correctly give the credentials, then you can get the login successful. If not, you should display the message by using the custom exception. Okay, this is another example. Like if you go with the ATM in your account, you have only 2000 rupees, but you are trying to withdraw 5000 rupees, then it will display the message insufficient funds. So how will you display this message? By using the user defined exception or custom exception. Okay. So this is the some examples. Now, while writing the custom exception, we need to follow some rules. So first we'll try to understand what does it mean by custom exception. So the basic thing is, so based on the project, okay, I can mention based on the project, sometimes necessary to create custom exceptions, to create I would say based on the project, sometimes necessary to create custom exceptions. To create custom exceptions. Okay, custom exceptions. Okay, fine. So while creating the custom exceptions, we need to follow the rules. So what are the rules? First rule number one. So whatever the exception is coming, so based on the exception, we should create the class. Okay, the first one is create the class, create the class based on the exception, based on the exception. Okay, create the class based on the exception. This is the first, I would say, for example, if you observe here you might get the exception, that is the invalid password exception, right? Invalid password exception. So you can take the class name as the invalid password exception. Invalid password exception. Okay. So in this case, you may be get the insufficient funds, right? So you can take the class as insufficient funds. You can take the, so exception name, you can take the class name. That is the rule number one. Rule number one is the create the class based on the exception name. Based on the exception name. Okay. Next thing is exception class should inherit exception class inherit either checked exception or I can mention either checked exception. This is either exception. This exception is also called as checked exception. Okay, and runtime exception. Unchecked exception. So this unchecked exception also called as runtime exception. This unchecked exception also called as runtime exception. Runtime exception. Are you guys clear with the point? This is the rule number 2. First rule is you should create the class name based on the exception, and the second one is exception class inherit either exception, that is the checked exception, or unchecked exception. Okay, that is the rule number 2. And the third rule is so exception class exception class exception class create the object and invoke or throw the object invoke or throw the object. And fourth rule is we can handle by using throw try and catch keywords. We can handle exceptions. So generally here we need to understand three things generally. So the first thing is we can create the exception by using the we can create the class name by using the exception name, and then here exception had occurred and exception object was created, and so for object should be catch, and we will give the best solution for the catch block. So object got created. Okay, so the thing is, so I have to remember this thing is exception had occurred and exception object got created and object will thrown, and so here we will display some message. So in the exceptions we need to remember these four things. First of all, exception had occurred and exception object got created and object thrown, and we will give the best suitable solution for that one. These are the four things we need to remember. So the first thing is exception had occurred. Exception occurred. Exception occurred. Exception occurred. And next one is object created and object thrown, and we will give the best solution for. We will give the best solution here. Okay, this is the thing you need to remember. These are the rules actually. Okay, so what does it mean by custom exception? Basically, so sometimes based on the project, sometimes necessary to create the custom exceptions. So rules we have to follow while I did the custom exception. We need to follow the four rules. The first rule is class name, and I would say okay, the four rules are, first one is the create the class based on the exception name. So in this scenario, you should take the invalid password exception. In this scenario, you should take the class name as the insufficient funds as the class name. Okay, so that is the first point. The rule number one is, so based on the exception name, you can take as the class name. And next one is that exception class should inherit either exception or either checked exception or unchecked exception. That is the rule number 2. And third one is exception class create the object and you can throw the object. Then you can handle the exceptions. Okay, the same thing I will show you programmatically. Then you know when you'll get the clarity on it. So simply I will go to my IDE. Now I will take one more package. which is basically, I will take the package. The package name is, I can mention it. Today is Tuesday, right? I will mention package name as a Tuesday. Okay, so here inside, I will take the class name is invalid password exception. Can take the same example. This example I would like to take. Okay, Gmail example I am taking. Okay, so my exception is invalid credentials, invalid password exception. We can take the class and can give the class name is invalid password exception. Okay, invalid password exception. This is the rule number one done. Rule number one is done. Okay, so you can identify the exception and you should give the class name as the exception. Rule number one is done. Okay, this is done. And the second rule is what we have. Second rule is exception class. Exception class. This is the exception class, right? This is the exception class. Exception class inherit either exception or unchecked exception. Okay, so here what I will do, I am inherit the properties that is extends. I can mention with extends runtime exception. Runtime exception. Runtime exception. Okay, so this is the one file you should do. You should take like this. You can identify the exception based on the exception. You can identify and the same name you can take as the class name also. That is the rule number one. Rule number two, you should inherit the either checked exception or unchecked exception. So in our case, I am taking runtime exception. Okay, and then so you can take one more file, control N, and I am taking the file that is some login form. I would like to take login form. The class name is login form. Okay. Now my requirement is I will write some my requirement. The requirement generally. So if I will take the ID, okay, the ID which is in the format of. So generally I will take the string username. String username equal to admin. Okay, and next we have enter password equal to. I would like to mention some 1 2 3 4 5. 1 2 3 4 5. So according to my requirement, if the both are valid, if the both are good, then only it should be login. If the both are correct, then only it should be correct. Okay. So for that purpose, I will take the if block. So generally in the if block, so I will mention already like if you want to comparison the strings, you should use the dot equals method. Okay, if you want to compare the numbers, you should use the equals operator. Okay, if you want to compare the string, you should use the dot equals method. Okay, so in my case, I would like to compare username dot equals to dot equals to dot equals to here I would like to mention admin. Okay, similarly I can come down and here again I would like to take can mention some long data long some password equal to can take some number. Okay, now if dot equals okay again inside the if block I would like to take one more if block. So here I will mention simply password equals to 1 2 3 4. Okay, so if the both are okay, then I need to display the message is login successful, login successful, login successful, right? So this one, the entire thing I will take inside the main method. I will take the main method. Okay, inside the main method I would like to take, I will take, so then we'll get the equals. Okay, now as of now is clear. So I did a hard coding, right? So string username and password is equal to 1 2 3 4, and here I am taking the conditions. So if the username and password the both are equal, then only we can display the message is login successful, login successful. So here I can get the result is login successful. For example, if I take as my Java application, then I can get the login successful. That my requirement is not like this. So if I give the wrong credentials, I need to display the message. I need to display the message. For example, if I give any other thing, so if I give any other thing, so then we need to write some message, right? For example, in that case, we will not get anything. So only the two conditions is true, then only it will, the controller will go inside and it will display the login successful message. Then it will display the login successful message. So here one more thing I will do here. This is the hard coding, right? So directly I am initializing the variables here. So instead of doing the hard coding, what I will do, I will use the scanner class, and through that I can read the data from the keyboard. So for reading the scanner class, I would like to take the scanner, and here I can mention system dot out dot in. Okay, and then you need to import the package scanner. You can store in some scanner. Okay, okay, we have the methods for reading the this is the string, right? For reading the string data type, where we have the methods. So simply you can click on the SC, and then you can go down. If you see, if you want to read the string data type, then you can use the method that is the next method. You can select the next method. Okay, you can select the next method, and here you can store this one in some username, and this username data type is the string. Okay, here for understanding purpose, I will take one sysout statement. Here I will mention enter username, enter username, enter username. Okay, and the same scenario, I will take one more sysout statement, and here I will mention the dummy messages, enter password, enter password. Okay, now this is the long type, right? Long type or int type, you can take anything. You can take anything. So for example, I want to read the integer data type, sc dot. We can come down where we have the methods. Come down the method I keep next int, I guess. Next byte. If you come a little bit down, this is the method which is used to read the data, integer data from the keyboard. Okay, again I am storing this one in password variable, and this password variable data type is the int. This password data type is the string int. Okay, okay, fine. So this is the hard coding. So now I don't want hard coding. So I need to read. My requirement is I can read the data from the keyboard, and through that I can validate. Through that I can validate. Okay. So if I go this approach, then what will happen generally? If I run this one, then it will ask the username and password generally. demo, and you can proceed. Now it will ask username. It will ask the username. For example, here I would like to give the username, and if I give the, I can get the login successful. I can get the login. Generally, what we did, so instead of taking the hard coding, we are reading the values from the keyboard. Okay, so this is also not our requirement generally. So what we did, we are taking the data from the keyboard. Okay, so now our requirement is if the credentials are wrong, then we need to display else. Here you can mention inside the else block, you should take um, try block. So inside the try block, what you will do now? Try and catch block. So the both are combinations actually. So here, whatever the exception you have created, you can take the exception name, you can copy the exception name, and already you know what is happens the process internally. So you can create the object by using the new keyword, and then here we can store this object in some variable, and this class name is the invalid exception, and you should throw here, you should throw object. Okay, you should throw. Okay, and then here what you tell, can mention invalid exception, and then here you can pass some dummy message. So you are trying to giving invalid invalid credentials. And if I save this one, then for example, now in this scenario you can observe, enter username, I would like to give some admin. Okay, this is the wrong one actually, and the second one is the 1234, right? So if you come to the code, username, and where the block got ends. Okay, this got now you can again run one more time. Okay, and then now you can give the admin. Okay, now you can give the wrong password actually. Now you are displaying the message, right? You are trying to give the invalid credentials. You are trying to giving the invalid credentials. So like this, so some based on some projects, we'll create our own exceptions actually. Okay, we will create our own exceptions actually. So the controller will come to here. It will check the username. If the username is correct, then it will go to inside, and here also it is okay. Then it will display this one. Here the password is wrong. Then directly it will come to the else block. Directly it will come to the else block. For example, if you want to, like, if you give the wrong username also, you need to create the exception. Then at the time, what you will do, you can cut from this one here, and then we can place, this is the if block, and you can place here actually, you can place here. So in this case, if you give the wrong username also, then it will display. Generally I will show you here. For example, run as Java application, and you can go with proceed. Now if I give the some wrong credentials, and here also I am giving, so it is throwing the error which is input mispass exception. I will run one more time. Run as Java application. Now I will give username is some wrong, and then 1234. Now if you observe here, only the thing is, if you place this one inside, then if you are giving the wrong password, then it will display. So this else block, if you keep for the outer if block, then it will display for the user admin. If you give the username as the wrong, then it will display some dummy message. Then it will display some dummy message. Then it will display some dummy message. So this is the thing. So generally, so sometimes based on the requirement, we will create our custom exceptions. We will create our custom exceptions. Are you guys clear with my points? Can you please read all these points? What is custom exception? Based on the project, sometimes necessary to create the custom exception. While writing the custom exception, we have to follow some rules. What are the rules? First one is create the class based on the exception name, and the second one is exception class should inherit either exception or unchecked exception. Third one is exception class create the object and invoke or throw the object. And fourth one is we can handle. So simply here also we have created the exception and we have inherited the runtime exception. And next one is we have created the object and the object code thrown, and we are handling by using the try and catch block. We are handling by using the try and catch blocks. We are handling by using the try and catch block. So this is the general scenario. Here, if you want to comparison between the strings, you should use dot equals method. If you want to comparison between the numbers, you should use the double equals operator. Okay, that is also you need to remember. If you want to comparison, username and admin, if you want to comparison, then you should use the dot equals method. And if you want to comparison between two numbers, you should use the numbers. You should use the numbers. So this is the general example for I can mention. I would say custom exceptions. So custom exceptions also we will use. So for example, we'll see some. Is there any examples of this? So they have tried with some age. If the age is greater than, then they have to display age is not valid for vote. The same example they have taken with the age. Okay, so they are checking the condition. If the age is greater than 18, then the age is valid for the eligible for the vote. If the age is less than 18, then you are not eligible for the vote. So the same message they have displayed, and they are using the try and catch block, and they are handling the exceptions. They are handling the exceptions. Okay, so this is all about user defined exceptions. Okay, so in the exception handling, these are the topics you should learn. Okay, what is exception? Types of exception, exception hierarchy, checked exception, unchecked exception, exception handling keywords, try keyword, catch keyword, final keyword, throws keyword, throw keyword, and custom exception. Custom exception. Okay, this is the thing. Okay, so, so that's it. So what today your assignment is, you can do the programs on custom exception. Custom exception. Okay, I'm stopping the live.